Hey everyone, I'm Josh Holtz, and tonight, I'm going to be talking about fastlane on CI, like a pro. So we'll get going. So just a little bit about me. I'm from the United States. I currently live in Chicago, Illinois. This is what our downtown looks like, just for a little bit of fun. And I'm originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, just a little bit north. And that's what Milwaukee looks like. In my personal life, I like to be active. I rock climb when I have time. During warm weather, I'm on the lake, on the boat, wakeboarding, stuff like that. And then I became a dad in 2020. That's Hudson. He's a little bit older now, but that's my favorite hobby right now, if that's considered a hobby. Another thing about me is I actually have a stutter, so I'm not a huge fan of talking in general, but I love public speaking. It does not make sense. So I might have some speech issues, but we'll see how it goes today. So work life, Revenue Cat is where I currently work. I became a customer of Revenue Cat in my indie personal apps in 2020. And I because I didn't want to do in-app purchase stuff myself because it looked terrible, but I loved what Revenue Cat did. I loved everything about them, and I ended up becoming a software engineer for them this past year. And I'm working on the stuff that I didn't want to work on, but it is absolutely awesome. Revenue Cat, by the way, is a mobile subscription platform for Apple, Google Play, Amazon, making it a lot easier for your apps to purchase things. And then Fastlane, which is why we're here. Fastlane, I became a core contributor in 2015, and I became the lead maintainer in 2018. And we'll get into what Fastlane is and how you can use it for your continuous integration right now. So topics we will cover: what is Fastlane? What can you do with it? Fastlane on a CI, which CI is continuous integration and continuous deployment. Should have put that in here as well. Why do you want to use Fastlane on a CI? And then compatible CI products and services with Fastlane. And then tips for optimizing your scripts and all that kind of stuff for a CI to make it as easy as possible on you and anybody else who has to maintain it. So what is Fastlane? Fastlane, from our website, is app automation done right. It's the easiest way to build and release your iOS apps, Android apps, Mac apps. Fastlane handles all the tedious tasks. It'll do a lot of stuff that will be like code signing, taking screenshots, uploading stuff to the App Store, Google Play, sending test flight invites out. There's so many different things that Fastlane can help you do just to make all of that stuff a little bit easier. So Fastlane is a command line tool. So there are a bunch of commands that you can do to upload your apps to the App Store or take screenshots. It's also a scripting DSL. So if you don't want to just use a single command line, you can, using our actions and plugins, combine everything together into your perfect script that does everything that you need it to do. So we'll get into that. Then it's also a Ruby gem by itself. So even if you don't want to use Fastlane on the command line or write a script for it, and you have like a Ruby project or a Ruby backend that needs to do some stuff with the app stores and stuff, you can use our code and pull that in, and everything works. We're not going to talk about that today, but that is what Fastlane also does. So Fastlane in the command line. This one we're not going to talk too much about today because we are talking about CI, but this is just a little overview. So you can run our deliver command, which is what uploads your app to the App Store, and you can submit for review. So you just execute this one little line, and it may ask you some stuff like your Apple ID, bundle ID maybe, and Fastlane will take care of all of the rest of that for you, so you don't need to open App Store Connect at all or open Xcode. This will just do all of that. So this is kind of what we're going to be gearing towards today. The Fastfile is our DSL type of script thing. So it is Ruby, but it doesn't necessarily feel like Ruby. And a fastlane lane is kind of your like little task that what you want to execute. So this is our pre-release lane example. So when this gets run, and you can see over on the right, that's how it gets run. Maybe not. I can't point to that right now. But you just have to call it by its name. And what this lane does is it'll bump our app. So if it's version 1.2, it'll bump it to 1.3, get the change log. It'll call build iOS app, which runs Xcode build under the hood, and that'll compile it and create our IPA. And then the uploaded test flight will take that IPA, upload it to App Store Connect, set the change log, distribute it to our external groups. And then after that's all done, it will download the desymbolication symbols, then we'll upload them to whatever crash reporting we are configured for. So Fastlane can do all of this for you. I mean, you have to do some configuration, but it will automate all of those steps. So this is something that we could run on our machine. As an indie developer, I tend to run this on my machine. But if I'm working with a team of people and I'm committing things quite often, I don't necessarily want to run on my machine. So we're going to talk about moving this over into a continuous integration kind of workflow. But just a little bit more information. These aren't just the only actions that you can do. Fastlane has a ton of actions, so you can do stuff with testing, building, screenshots, project configuration, code signing, source control, so like Git, Mercurial, whatever you're using, notifications, App Store Connect. There's just a ton of different things that are already built in that you can use to kind of configure your own process. We also have third-party plugins. So Microsoft has one for App Center that they maintain, so you can upload your builds to App Center. Google has one for their app distribution, and then there's a lot of other people that have one like Badge that adds a badge overlay to your app icon, so you might have to say like alpha on it or something like that. There's a ton of those that you can also pull into your project. So why Fastlane on CI though? If we can do it on our machine, great. Like, why not? The most important part, at least in my eyes, is to commit your app store or your app to your source control. There's a lot of different steps that go into building and releasing apps on the app stores, and having this information not written out, not automated. Sometimes you can forget a step, or if you get promoted, change teams or something like that, then your team is kind of left without this process. So moving all of your steps onto a CI, you can commit all of that. You don't have to remember all the steps in your head. Everything can get done on its own, and it's there. If something changes, you can go back in history and see kind of like what changed. But having everything always committed is super nice and great for quality. Free up your machine. Sometimes making a build can take quite a bit of time. Taking screenshots can take quite a bit of time, and you need to get other work done. So why not just run it on a CI somewhere off your machine in the cloud, as they say. And then you can get back to doing your work, or if you want to, run it on your way back home from work. So you can just commit at the end of the day, and then you're at maybe on the App Store when you get home from work. Um, Lots of things there, but your machine doesn't need to get used for all of this stuff. Run tests and make build on different hardware. With the release of the M1, a lot of us maybe have M1s, but sometimes some builds need to work on an Intel machine still. Or the opposite way, you have an Intel but it needs to build on an M1. You can script all your process out, ship it off to a CI, and it can run on whatever hardware it's there. You don't have to do anything else. Everything is scripted the exact same way. It's just running on different hardware. There might be some more benefits here, but these are the ones that I pulled out, and kind of having this all scripted out is very impressive. It could impress coworkers, could impress future jobs that you may want to apply for. Automating steps is always a good thing to do, so it's impressive. Compatible CI products and services. So Fastlane can run on your local machine, but like, what other CI services can it run on? Well, it can run on Azure DevOps, Bamboo, Bitrise, Circle CI, CodeMagic, GitHub Actions, GitLab, Jenkins, Mac Stadium. It can run on any other Mac Mini that's connected to the internet, a rack of Mac Minis, and it could also run on a Raspberry Pi if you wanted it to. So you could just have a rack of Raspberry Pis. Really, Fastlane can run anywhere, and that's the benefit of having your automation configured this way. Run on your machine. Let's say you are on Circle CI and you want to change to GitHub Actions eventually, and then you realize GitHub Actions isn't working out for you. You want to go back to Circle CI or go to a Jenkins machine that's on site at your job. You don't have to reconfigure much about your automation steps to get all of that working. Your same script will run almost the exact same everywhere. And it's really nice to be not locked into one CI thing. Cool. So now that we covered that, we're going to actually get into our Fastlane process a little bit and kind of rework it so that it is kind of so that it's perfect for the CI. So this is my release lane. We will build the iOS app. And then we will sync our code. Code signing is actually supposed to be before build iOS app. So just pretend that build iOS app is second. Sync our code signing. And that's our certs and profiles. Then we'll build the iOS app. I should have fixed this. I'm already too deep in this talk. And then we will upload to test flight after that. So we can see here that we have some things hard-coded. We have my Apple ID in there, which is not great, but that's how I had it developed for my machine. I mean, it works, but it's not going to run on a CI because a CI, I'm going to authenticate with 2FA with my Apple ID, and that's not really how CI works. So we need to kind of use a different auth method, and then we also don't want like our secrets and stuff stored in this file. We kind of want them to be put in a way that is very configurable and flexible, so we can configure them on the CI. So this release, so we're gonna change it up here. I'm first gonna remove my Apple ID and replace it with App Store Connect, the App Store Connect API key. So the App Store Connect API key was introduced in like 2018, and it's a way to authenticate with App Store Connect without using your personal Apple ID. So it is a little bit more secure, and that's the way that a lot of things are moving towards. So anything that we do, we're going to want to use the App Store Connect API key. And the API key has a key ID, issuer ID, and then a P8 file, which is your key. So we're going to call the App Store Connect API key action, and that will get us everything, and that will create the key that all the other tools will use. So when we get our certificates and profiles, that key will be used. And when we upload to test flight, it'll also use that as well. So my Apple ID is no longer used, which is awesome. But now we run into the issue of we have this secret API key information in this file that we don't want to commit to our repository. And then we need our CI to pick that up somewhere as well. And we don't really want to configure it in our fastlane lane right here in case it changes later on. We need to revoke it. We want to replace a new one. We don't want to have to push a new code change. We just want to make our setup configurable so we can change these things out whenever we want. So environment variables, that was a struggle, are what we're going to use next. So these env vars come with each action. So you see this App Store Connect API key action. The key ID has an env var, which is kind of long over on the right-hand side. The issuer ID has one as well, and they all have those associated with each other. So what we can do is set these env vars for our actions to pick up automatically so we don't have to set them in the code itself. Luckily, Fastlane also comes with support for .env, which we can run which when running locally will pull up these from a .env file that will make this a little bit easier to do. So I think showing this will probably make a little bit more sense, hopefully. So this is what a .env file looks like. You have your key on the left side, so workspace is our env name, and then that's associated with your app.workspace or a hotkey app API key token, and then your token is on the other equals sign side. So all of our action configurations we're going to store in something like this. So this is what it's going to look like. Our big lane with all of these hard-coded strings is now going to look like what it is on the right-hand side, where we're just calling the actions by their name now. So App Store Connect API key, build iOS app, sync signing. Again, those should be in the opposite order. I messed up. And then upload to test flight. So our .env file on the left side has all the configurations that we had before. We have our App Store Connect API key issue ID, our key ID, and our path to the P8 file. We have our match information, which is the sync code signing. That's just the name of those keys. So we have our app identifier. We're going to code sign for App Store, and then our URL for our certs is in there as well. And then for our test flight uploading, we have our app ID again, and then the groups that we're going to submit to. So QA, internal, and like we can change those at any time in there. So if we only want to upload to QA, we can just put QA. So this cleans up our Fastfile a lot right now. So we have like a configuration for it, and then the actual steps kind of separated by themselves. So this makes CI nice because these env vars that we put in our .env file, we can set those directly on the CI, which we'll see in a few more steps. But now our code on the right is still not perfect because we have this P8 file that we need to figure out how to put onto our CI at some point. And I don't want to have to find a way to pull in this P8 file on the CI. I don't want to have to store it encrypted somewhere. So what Fastlane can actually do, instead of reading the file itself, you can actually put the contents of the file in an env var. So instead of pointing to the P8 file, we can just put the contents in its own thing, and we're going to base64 encode it because the contents are a little weird. So our .env file looks real similar now, but instead of pointing to our P8 file, it's just this large blob of base64 encoded text that wouldn't fit here, and then we're just going to tell it that it is encoded, just so it knows. Cool. So this is pretty much how everything is all set now. Now we have to set up our CI. So I'm going to use Circle CI for this example. This is what our Circle CI YAML file is going to look like. Pretty much all we're doing is we're going to spin up a Mac job with Xcode 13.3 and call our lane release. And then fastlane is going to take care of the majority of it. There's no like complex bash scripts and stuff that need to get done in here. Like everything is contained. The same thing you're running on your local machine is now running the exact same way up on CI. But CI is not configured yet to run everything because it doesn't have our App Store Connect API key or any of that. So we're going to go to our env vars in Circle CI and just add everything that was in our .env file, which is kind of nice because it's pretty easy to know what to put in here. You just go line by line, add our App Store Connect API key, our issuer ID, the base 64 encoded, set to true, your match information, the match password, the match type, your app ID, your groups that you want to upload to. Everything is nicely configured in here. So if ever you need to revoke your API key, just come in here, set the new one, and your CI job will still work without having to do any code changes at all. One thing that we'll also need to do is, because we're using match on a CI, which I'll talk about this a little bit further in the next slide, is we want to have it read only. So we don't want it to interact with App Store Connect when creating new certs or profiles. We want to know exactly what it's doing, so it's just going to pull down everything that we've already created for our certs. So we'll just set that, and I mean that's kind of how I go through usually on doing CI stuff. I take my hard-coded information, pull them out, and I want to get my local setup as like in this exact same configuration format as a CI, so that I just need to configure things like on this screen, and then everything is good. So match, because I didn't talk about that yet. Match is also highly recommended for a CI. What match does is match is a Git repository that you store your Apple certificates and provisioning profiles in. And it's kind of like the best spot to store those. Usually when you create a cert, it gets stored in your keychain on your machine. But if you run with multiple machines, or if you have a team that you need to share distribution certs for, there's not really a nice central repository for doing that. But match is that solution. So when you run match, it will create a new cert and provisioning profile if you need them, and it'll store them encrypted on a storage of your choice. So it could be a Git repository, it could be on Amazon S3 or on Google Cloud Storage. So they're nice and safely stored, encrypted. And then when you run things again, it will pull the certs and provisioning profiles from there. So it's not always creating one. If one of your coworkers updates one or creates a new one, you can get that next time you run something. Or if your CI is doing something, your CI can pull that down for you. So it doesn't need to create new certs. It's just pulling down what you've already created. So Match is a highly recommended tool when running on CI, or also when running not on a CI. So this is just an example of what a Match repository looks like. I pulled mine down. It's storing the profiles, my development profiles, my App Store profiles. It has a bunch of my certs in it, my distribution certs, my development certs, my Mac installer certs. Everything is there, encrypted. And that's kind of what my CI would also then pull down and use to sign my iOS apps. So that's my quick little fastlane on a CI like a pro. There's so much more I probably could talk about that I probably could have gone more in depth, but it would have taken hours. I should probably have a series posted about all of this somewhere in a little bit more detail, but The goal is to have everything run the exact same on your machine as it does on CI. So all the configurations should be stored the same way. Anything that you change, secrets should be stored in the same way and used in the same way. So pulling them from a .env file is great because that's kind of how a CI also does it. That's what I said. Okay. Extract any configurations out that may change. Put them in the .env file. Don't use Apple ID authentication. This is the thing that can get the messiest and things you'll have to you might have to change. So I never use Apple ID auth right from the start. I always use API key because it is safer. The APIs are better, but also if I ever do want to move to a CI, then it's less changes I have to do. And then use the repository to store your certs and profiles because you don't want to create them on the CI or manually upload them. And that's all. Thank you for having me. There might be some questions. So if there's any questions for me at any time or needing clarifications, I'm pretty available on Twitter. You can DM me. My email is somewhere on there. Tweet me. I'm always happy to answer. But I think I'll be around for questions in some way. If not, yeah, email me, tweet me or something, and I'll be happy to answer. Thanks for having me.